Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I have been trying to start this reading vlog for so many weeks, but it's been a little bit of a crazy time. It's actually my first weekend home in a while. We were in Cape Cod 3 weekends ago just for a night, so it was a lot of driving, and then we were back at the cottage last weekend. So I'll insert some clips here. And since that weekend in Cape Cod, I have been reading The Shadow of the Wind, which is the book that I wanted to make this reading vlog about, because the second I picked this book up, sitting on the beach, I read the first 8 pages and fell in love. I just knew after those first few pages that this was a book that was made for me. And I've been reading it for such a long time. I don't know why, but it's like taken me forever. I've been busy, but also I've just been like savoring it. But I woke up crazy early this morning and I finished it. I read the last like 120 pages and I loved it. I have so many thoughts, so many things that I want to share about this book. When I was reading it at the cottage and I was with my parents, my mom actually mentioned that this is part of a series of 3 books, and they're not necessarily interconnected, but they're all about the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, which is a place in Barcelona where some of this book centers. And my mom said she loved them. She read all of them with her book club, so that made me even more excited that there's more where this came from. But I just found this endlessly enjoyable. It was much darker than I thought. It was so atmospheric. It was perfect for like this season of entering autumn. It's officially autumn, so I loved this. Yeah, I just found it like so well paced, so well plotted. It's quite literally exploding with plot, and because I read it over such a long time and so many weeks, I did find that when I would pick it up after a few days, I had to like remind myself of where we left off because the plotting is so intricate. There are so many little details that come up later. It's quite a nuanced and complex plot, different timelines, so many different characters that reappear, and kind of storylines that seem to mirror one another in different decades. So it was fantastic. About a month ago, I went through my entire physical TBR and pulled out books that I just don't think I'm ever going to read. And this is the stack that I came up with to rehome, and I haven't actually done the drop off yet, but there is one of those little free libraries not too far, so I figured I would take the dog on the walk and drop these off. But these are the books that I figured I would rehome. We have Mr. Fox, Why Fish Don't Exist, Daddy's Gone A-Hunting, The Night Circus, Alone with You in the Ether, Spring, and Prisoner's Dilemma. Of the books that I was considering unhauling, the only book that I decided to keep was The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Just too many people in the comments were convincing me that it is a book that I need to give a shot, and even if I don't like it, then I could rehome it. But a lot of people were saying that it is worth a read and even better than The Secret History, which is interesting because I really did enjoy The Secret History. So I decided to keep that one. I just wasn't ready to officially give it away, just in case. But these ones I'm going to drop off now. I wanted to share the two books that I picked up when I was out and about the other day because I'm really excited about them. The first just had such a wonderfully weird cover that I had to pick it up. This is Shadows of Carcosa, Tales of Cosmic Horror by Lovecraft, Poe, and other masters of the weird. Such a creepy and wonderful cover. So I think this is a good book for me to discover new to me authors in the weird. So I had to pick it up. And then the other book, I'm mostly just excited to display it, even though I might dip into it at some point. But this is The Complete Works of Shakespeare. And I just thought it was really beautiful. I might read pieces of it, certain plays at some point. I haven't read Shakespeare since I was a wee thing, but I feel like it's a must-have for my shelves to feel like I'm part of the reading community, so happy to get it. And Riley and I are just about to go on our post-work walk and go to the park, which he's been loving. He's been such a good boy. I was pretty nervous because he is very much like a country boy. He's not used to very crowded streets or a lot of dogs, and even the dogs that he is around regularly where he lives at home, he's not the most friendly or pleasant, but he's been really, really good. He's actually had some play dates with my sister's pup, and they've been so cute. They met up in the park this morning, and it was a beautiful autumn morning, and I just felt really fulfilled and happy. It's like, this is why he needs to stay with me forever. But I'll be so sad when he has to go back to my parents. I've been so happy having him here. you may have seen that I did start a new book, and I was originally wanting to do a dedicated video to rereading this book slash series, but I just am not organized enough for that, and I've already started and I'm about halfway through the first book, so I thought I would just share my update with you now. I am rereading Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, which if you are familiar with my channel or what I like to read, you may know that this is one of my favorite books of all time. It is basically a pillar of my reading identity. I read this originally about 4 years ago, and it set me on this journey of reading everything Vandermeer that I could possibly get my hands on, diving into the weird genre, exploring as many authors as possible in that world. But this basically has been the pinnacle of everything I've read. And I decided to return to it right now because the fourth book in this series is coming out in about 2 weeks. And before it comes in the mail, because I did pre-order it, I thought it was time to return to these books just to remind myself of the world, where we left off, immerse myself in the setting again. The fourth book is actually a prequel to the events that take place in the 3 books that are already out, but I just wanted to live in Area X again and remind myself of the fantastic things he does in these books. I did pick up the new editions, the 10-year anniversary editions, which are absolutely beautiful. So I'm reading Annihilation, and then we have Authority, Book 2, and Acceptance, Book 3. And this just has some of the most beautiful art, like this metallic edge to it, super weird. It reminds me of the cover of The Strange Bird, which I love. But I thought that I would just give you a little bit of a synopsis about what Annihilation is about, because I am about halfway through, and then I can give you some updates as I continue reading. But I thought that I would just try to get through as much of the 3 books as I can over the next week or so, and pick up the 4th book as soon as it touches my doorstep. Annihilation. We are introduced to the Southern Reach world, to Area X, the mysterious Area X in this book, and we set off with a group of women who are entering this mysterious Area X, which is on the tip of Florida. About 30 years ago, the event happened where an invisible border came down on this section of Florida, and this very uncanny and odd event happened that the government is constantly investigating by sending expeditions into Area X through this invisible border to map the terrain, to study the biology there, and to have an understanding of what happened. Is it terrestrial? Is it extraterrestrial? Is it something in between? Is it something unknown? And when we enter the world, it is now the 12th expedition being sent across this border, and it is a group of 4 women. We have a biologist, a psychologist, a surveyor, and an anthropologist. We are in the mind of the biologist from a first-person POV, but she is quite an unreliable narrator in the sense that she is hiding things from herself, from her colleagues. She is not sure of how her environment is affecting her, because essentially the reason we are now on our 12th expedition is because all of the expeditions before this have come back either changed, irrevocably changed, or they haven't come back at all. An example being that the 11th expedition, the members came back mysteriously one by one. They weren't sure. They weren't able to explain how they got back through the border. And within a couple months of being home, they were discovered to be absolutely riddled with cancer, and they died. But they also came back a bit comatose, unable to explain the events of their year-long journey on the other side of this border, when really they were there to be keeping very detailed journals to be able to report back about what's there. So Vandermeer sets it up beautifully to be very eerie, very uncanny, but one of the most beautiful things about Annihilation is the description of the setting. It is so vivid, so fully realized. You feel like you can touch every tree, every animal. You can see it with your mind's eye, and it is beautiful and idyllic. But there's a lot of elements to this book where you feel like it's a mimicry, or our characters are being transformed or maligned or manipulated by their environment, and it's very uncomfortable and really a bit scary. This is a book where you don't want any spoilers. It's really best to not know too much other than there's a mysterious border. 4 women go across with the intention of mapping and studying this environment that seems to have an oppressive, transformative effect on people. But what I will say is one of the most interesting things about this book is seeing the interaction between these four women while the environment is having this larger than life effect on them, and they're trying to understand the effect it has on them. You'll never really know, and that's okay, but there are so many theories that our biologist who were inside her mind is kind of shuffling through and playing with. You might come with your own ideas about what's happening, or who's in control, or who's manipulating what, or if nobody's in charge, and it's just perfect. But I'm going to go back to reading it now and hopefully get through the other two as well in the next week or so. But I definitely have to like buckle down and really give some time to my reading. I was so nervous to restart this book because I put it on such a pedestal over the past few years, and it's been like this book that I constantly think about and talk about, and it's just been, yeah, like this book that I put on a pedestal. And I'm so relieved that even though I'm only about halfway through, it has stood the test of time for me. I am absolutely loving it. It is so brilliant, so well paced. The language is stunning. There are so many sentences I'm like re-highlighting and taking notes as if I've never read it before. It's brilliant. Couple of days since we've spoken, but we were in Richmond, Virginia this past weekend for a wedding, and then we drove like 7 hours home and then flew to Mexico for like true vacation. So we've been here a few days and it's been wonderful, and I just feel like we need a catch up on reading because I finished Annihilation at some point in the car journey, and it was perfection. It is one of those books that's like a soul book for me. I am so glad I reread it. Absolutely holds up to the love I had for it the first time round. And it's really fun to reread these books because there's so many like little details that I now have like a new attention to. Yeah, I just think Annihilation is so perfectly done. It's a really short book, and I think if you can read it in just a few sittings, that's maybe the best way because there's so many intricacies, and the way that Vandermeer writes it, it does have
little bit of like a thriller and horror feel, and you just want to feel really immersed in the world and what our character is feeling or not feeling and the things that she's experiencing. But yeah, it's just a really interesting idea, the fact that this mysterious Area X is obstructs human engagement in this environment by way of, for example, not allowing modern technology to be useful there, and it kind of tampers with that, but also just our human way of categorizing a place, based on the 4 different scientists who enter Area X. We have a biologist, a psychologist, an anthropologist, a surveyor, and how each of those people would categorize a place and how it doesn't allow them to do that. It's just really wonderful. I feel like it could be a standalone, but luckily enough, Vandermeer did release additional books in this world. So now I am a little over halfway through Authority, which is the second book. And in this book, we've left Area X. We have just come outside of Area X across the border. And we are in the Southern Reach, the government agency that is charged with classifying and containing Area X. And we are in a first-person POV with a man named Control, John Rodriguez, but he goes by Control, and he is trying to fill in for the missing director of the Southern Reach. And there's a little bit of nepotism going on to get him this role, and he is very quickly trying to become immersed in the Southern Reach, where the director made certain decisions, what's going wrong, personnel issues, but at the crux of it, like all of these things that are behaving oddly, and we're like uncovering the data that's been kept for the past decades with Control, and it's just really interesting. It's quite creepy. It's almost more so creepy because we are in a very familiar setting, like a government building, an office building. It's a very familiar and comfortable setting, but because people are behaving so oddly and things are being found in the building that just are so mysterious and strange, that it's actually a bit scarier than just being in Area X where you expect things to not behave as they should. So I'm absolutely loving it. I'm going to go down to the beach and try to finish it today, because I also brought Authority in the hopes I could finish it while I was here, because when I get home I am sure that I'll have the new book on my doorstep, because I ordered it and I know it will be there, so I want to make sure that I can go home and pick it up ASAP. I finished Authority. I sat reading this for hours and hours and hours today, and I started Acceptance, just like the first 15 pages, but I loved this. I forgot how much I enjoyed this. One of the scenes that like stuck out, that's been ingrained in my brain for the past few years, is the scene with the deranged Whitby. So I remembered that, but a lot of the other little elements and kind of small plot points that Vandermeer adds into this book and into the mystery of Area X, I didn't really remember the details, so it was super fun to reread it. Definitely adds a lot of like little threads of plot to the overall mystery of Area X, and like the potential, the questions to be asked, the answers that won't come, but like it adds a lot of little threads of detail, and like parts of the mystery that could have a lot of significance. It's mostly a character study of our protagonist Control, who's kind of like a tragic figure. It's just a little bit of a sob story with him. He's not at all effective in his new role, but he's kind of set up for failure in a lot of ways, so it's really interesting to see him uncover certain things and how he feels they should be addressed, and it's just like one kind of tragic episode after the next. But he's also uncovering these little details that like help to build the surround sound of what's happening with the Southern Reach and the history and the legacy of Area X. And I kind of forgot how this book ended, but it has such a fantastic ending, and it made me so excited to pick up Acceptance. I would give this book a 5 out of 5, as I would with Annihilation. I think they have a pretty different feel, and this is a little bit longer. There's a little bit more drudgery, but I just really, really enjoyed it. I'm just sat here having the remnants of my spicy margarita, and then we're gonna head out for dinner. It's a beautiful evening. I definitely got a lot of water in my ear today, which freaks me out because I have the tube in my ear, and I know that water can't get in through the tube, hypothetically. But whenever I get water in my ear, I just have like a panic that it's gonna like infiltrate my brain. But it's probably fine. I'm really excited to read Acceptance. That is the book that I remember the least about, because I know that this book throws like way more curveballs into the mix, and some of the very structures that like we hold to be pillars of our existence, like time, place, space, physical presence, yeah, all of those things and more are kind of like shaken, and those core, not values, but those core truths that kind of hold us in check, in some sort of sanity, or put to the test. So I remember that, but I'm really excited to read it, and I really enjoy like getting a bit more of the backstory. Like now we're understanding a bit more about the people who lived in this Area X before the border came down, and some of those intricacies that might have happened that might have like sparked a quickening of the events that were going to transpire, or just had like a big presence, and have left like a lasting mark on the physical environment. So I'm really excited to read it, and that's all I have for you right now. We are finally home, and I wanted to wrap up this video because I think it's already quite long. I'm still reading Acceptance. I think I'm about halfway, maybe a little less than halfway through, and absolutely loving it. This is quite different than the other two. The other two tell a pretty linear story. This one, we're bouncing around in time, but we are back within the confines, whatever that means, of Area X, and we're following multiple characters, where in the first two books we are with the biologist, then we're with Control, who's filling in for the director of the Southern Reach. But here, each chapter, we're like jumping around to different characters from the previous books, whether they be main characters or kind of on the side of events that have happened in the past, but they're getting additional background to their story. So I'm really loving it. A lot of it is quite profound and really beautiful, and I just love being back in Area X and like seeing everything that the characters are seeing. It's beautiful. But when we were in Richmond, I picked up one book. Really, this series and the new book coming out is kind of my literary event of the year. But one of the other books that I was really looking forward to is Little Rot by Akwaeke Emezi. I went through an Emezi phase a couple of years ago and read 3 of their books, 2 of their novels, Freshwater being an absolute favorite, and then I read their memoir and also really loved it. And they just came out with a brand new novel, which is a really fun cover. So this is supposed to be about 5 characters connected in varying ways, but who are sucked into the city's corrupt and glittering underworld. They're all looking for a way out, fueled by a desperate need to escape the dangerous threat that looms over them.
So I think it's thriller-esque, but I will just read anything Emezi writes. I have loved their books in the past, so I'm super excited about this one. But with that, I'm going to close this one out, and I will see you very soon. Thanks so much for watching.